3 weeks later, Overseer Choi Minho found himself standing in what the aliens called an integration facility. The building was enormous, made of black stone that seemed to absorb light. Everything about it was designed to make newcomers feel small and hopeless. The corridors were too wide, the ceilings too high, and strange sounds echoed from hidden speakers. "Cheerful place," commented technician Han Yuri as she looked around their assigned quarters. The room was deliberately uncomfortable, with hard beds, dim lighting, and walls that showed images of alien armies conquering worlds. "Standard psychological warfare," said researcher Jang Hyun-soo, taking notes in his tablet. "They want to break our spirits before the real process begins." Lieutenant Kang Ji-won tested the door and windows. "No locks on the inside. They want us to feel trapped." "Well, we're not trapped," Choi said practically. "We're here to learn about their system. This is just part of the experience." Over the next few days, more humans arrived. They were sorted into groups and given basic work assignments. The aliens expected them to be grateful for food and shelter, to compete with each other for better treatment, and to gradually accept their place at the bottom of the Empire's hierarchy. Instead, the humans started making friends. Yuri spent her free time learning alien languages from the guards. She discovered that most of them were just regular people doing their jobs, not evil overlords. Many were actually quite friendly once they realized humans weren't going to cower or attack them. "Your language has 17 different words for submission," she told a guard named Krex during one of their conversations. "But only 3 words for friendship. That seems backwards to me." Krex's 4 eyes blinked slowly. "Friendship is not important in the Empire. Really? That sounds lonely." The guard looked confused but thoughtful. Meanwhile, Jang was studying the facility's psychology. He noticed that the fear chambers were designed based on research from hundreds of conquered species. Each test was meant to trigger deep, primal fears that would break a person's will to resist. When his turn came for testing, Yang entered. The first chamber with curiosity, the room filled with images of Earth being destroyed while alien voices spoke of human weakness and failure. "Interesting approach," Jang said to the monitoring technicians. "You're using a combination of catastrophic visualization and social degradation. The sound frequency is designed to trigger stress responses, right?" The technicians exchanged glances. Usually subjects were screaming or begging by this point. "Are you not afraid?" one of them asked. "Of course I'm concerned about Earth's safety," Jang replied reasonably, "but getting scared won't help anyone." "Could you run that sequence again? I want to study the visual techniques you're using." Word spread quickly through the facility that the humans were behaving strangely. Instead of breaking down under the psychological tests, they were treating them like educational opportunities. Choi organized the humans into efficient work groups. The facility's jobs were designed to be degrading and pointless, meant to crush spirits and teach submission. But Choi treated them like any other work assignments. "Okay, everyone. Group A will handle the cleaning duties. Group B takes care of food service. Group C handles waste management," he announced during their morning meeting. "These jobs are meant to humiliate us," one human pointed out. "Work is work," Choi replied. "Let's just do it well and see what we can learn." The humans approached their menial tasks with the same attitude they brought to everything else: practical problem solving. The cleaning group figured out more efficient methods. The food service group improved the nutritional value of meals. The waste management group optimized the entire system. Within a week, the facility was running better than it had in decades. The alien supervisors didn't know how to react. Usually, new species either rebelled and were crushed, or submitted completely. The humans did neither. They followed rules but made improvements. They accepted their assignments but organized themselves. They showed no signs of breaking, but they weren't fighting either. "What is your plan?" Supervisor Kalmore asked Choi during one of their meetings. "Plan for what?" "Your rebellion. Your attempt to escape. Your species must be plotting something." Choi looked genuinely puzzled. "We're just trying to understand your system. Why would we rebel against something we don't even comprehend yet?" "All species rebel when they first arrive. Maybe they didn't understand what was happening. Communication is important for cooperation. The supervisor's tentacles waved in frustration. You are supposed to be broken by now, accepting your inferior status, learning your place. Our place seems to be right here doing these jobs, Choi said calmly. We're fine with that for now, though I did have some suggestions for improving the work schedules. Kalmor left the meeting more confused than ever. The situation became even stranger when the humans started socializing with other species in the facility. The Empire kept different species separated to prevent alliances, but the humans ignored these unwritten rules. Kang began teaching self-defense classes to anyone who was interested. She discovered that many species had been warriors before their conquest, but had forgotten their strength over generations of submission. You have natural advantages, she told a group of reptilian Vorth. Your reflexes are twice as fast as ours. Why aren't you using them? Fighting is forbidden, one of them replied nervously. I'm not teaching you to fight the Empire. I'm teaching you to feel confident in yourselves. There's a difference. Yuri organized language exchange sessions where different species could teach each other their native tongues. These sessions revealed something the Empire had tried to hide. Most of the conquered species shared similar values of family, friendship, and creativity. We have more in common than the Empire wants us to realize, Yuri told Zhang one evening. That makes sense, Zhang replied. Divide and conquer is a classic control strategy. Keep everyone isolated so they can't unite. The integration facilities' carefully maintained atmosphere of despair began to change. Conversations replaced fearful silence. Laughter echoed in corridors that had known only crying and screams. Work groups from different species started collaborating on projects. The facility's administrators called for a special evaluation. They subjected the humans to the ultimate fear simulation, a psychological test so intense it had broken the will of entire civilizations. The humans were placed in a chamber that created perfect illusions of their worst fears. The system read their minds and manifested their deepest terrors in realistic detail. Zhang found himself facing the destruction of all human knowledge and art. Yuri experienced total isolation from all communication and friendship. Choi saw humanity enslaved and suffering. Kang witnessed the complete breakdown of honor and justice. But instead of breaking down, the humans began analyzing what they were experiencing. This is incredible technology, Zhang said, even as horrifying images surrounded him. How are you, creating such realistic sensory input? The emotional manipulation is sophisticated, Yuri observed while experiencing her fear of isolation. But it's still just manipulation. These scenarios aren't real, Choi announced to his group. They're designed to make us give up hope. But hope isn't based on avoiding bad outcomes. It's based on working toward good ones. Kang studied the fear simulation like a tactical exercise. They're trying to convince us that resistance is hopeless, but they wouldn't need to convince us if it was actually true. The monitoring aliens watched in amazement as the humans not only resisted the simulation, but began to help each other through it. They shared observations, offered encouragement, and even started laughing at some of the more dramatic fear scenarios. Is the system malfunctioning? Asked one technician. No, replied the chief administrator, studying the readings. The system is working perfectly. The humans are just immune to it somehow. When the test ended, the humans emerged looking tired but unbroken. Zhang immediately began asking questions about the technology. Yuri wanted to know if she could get copies of the psychological profiles it had created. Choi suggested ways to use similar systems for therapeutic purposes instead of intimidation. The facility's staff held an emergency meeting that night. They are not responding to any of our standard procedures, reported Supervisor Culmore. Perhaps they need more time, suggested another administrator. It has been 3 weeks. Most species submit within 3 days. What do we do with them? B. Question hung in the air. For the first time in the facility's history, they had encountered a species that couldn't be broken by fear, couldn't be controlled by intimidation, and refused to accept that their situation was hopeless. The next morning, Choi found a message waiting for him. The facility administrators wanted to speak with him privately. We have a proposal, Culmore said when they met. Your species is Unusual. Perhaps there is a different place for you in the Empire. What did you have in mind? The Empire has many challenges that require creative solutions. Your people seem good at solving problems. Choi smiled. We do enjoy a good puzzle. What kind of challenges are we talking about? For the first time since arriving at the integration facility, he saw something new in the alien's expression. It took him a moment to recognize it. It was hope. Admiral Yoon Tai-ho stood at the viewing window of Earth's first interstellar ship, watching the massive alien vessel approach. The ship was 10 times larger than anything humans had ever built. Its dark metal surface was covered in sharp spikes and glowing red symbols that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Most people would have been terrified. Yoon just found it interesting. Captain Park, what do you think of their design? He asked the woman beside him. Captain Park. So-min tilted her head, studying the alien ship. Those spikes look pretty, but they create drag in space, and all that red lighting must use a lot of power. Not very practical. Dr. Kim Woo-jin looked up from his tablet where he was taking notes. The psychological effect is clear. They want us to feel small and afraid. Classic intimidation tactics. Commander Lee Da-yoon checked her weapon but kept it holstered. Should we be worried about an attack? Probably not, Yoon said calmly. If they wanted to destroy us, they would have done it already. They want something from us. The alien ship sent a message in broken English. Primitive species of Sol 3. Prepare for immediate surrender. Resistance is impossible. Your world belongs to the Galactic Empire now. Park laughed. Well, they're direct. I'll give them that. Should I respond? Asked Han Yuri from the communication station. Tell them. We'd be happy to meet with them, Yoon said. But we're not surrendering to anyone until we know more about them. Yuri sent the message. Within minutes, the alien ship's reply came back. You do not understand. Surrender is not optional. We are the Empire. We rule 847 species across the Dior galaxy. You will comply. 847 species? Dr. Kim's eyes lit up. Think of what we could learn from them. The alien ship moved closer, its weapons powering up with bright energy. Another message arrived. This is your final warning. Surrender or face destruction. Yoon looked at his team. None of them seemed particularly worried. Park was still studying the ship's design. Dr. Kim was making more notes. Commander Lee was calm and ready. Yuri was trying to analyze their communication system. Tell them we decline their generous offer of surrender, Yoon said. But we'd like to negotiate better terms. Yuri's hands paused over her controls. Sir, are you sure about that? Absolutely. The message was sent. For several minutes there was silence from the alien ship. Then a new message came. You decline? This is impossible. All species submit immediately upon seeing our power. Maybe they haven't met the right species yet, Park said with a grin. The alien ship's weapons powered down. Instead, a smaller ship detached and approached. A voice came over the communications. We are sending a delegation to your vessel. Prepare for boarding. Should we prepare for combat? Lee asked. No, Yoon said. Let's prepare for a conversation. Yeah. Alien shuttle docked with their ship. Yoon and his team waited in the main meeting room. The airlock opened with a hiss, and 3 figures walked in. The aliens were tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes. They wore elaborate uniforms covered in medals and symbols. The leader stepped forward, his voice deep and threatening. I am High Commander Vexthul of the Galactic Empire. You will kneel before me and accept your species' place as servants. Nobody knelt. Yoon stood up and extended his hand. Nice to meet you, Commander. I'm Admiral Yoon Tai-ho. Would you like some coffee? We just made a fresh pot. The alien stared at the offered hand. You offer me refreshments? Sure. It's a long trip between stars. You must be tired. The other 2 aliens whispered urgently to their commander in their own language. Dr. Kim was already taking notes on their speech patterns. You do not fear us, Vexthul said, and it wasn't a question. Should we? Park asked. You haven't done anything scary yet. We have weapons that can destroy your entire world. That's impressive, Dr. Kim said, looking up from his notes. How do they work? Some kind of quantum disruption, matter conversion? The alien commander looked confused. You want to know how our planet-killer weapons function? Of course. Think of what we could learn from such advanced technology. Could you show us the energy signatures? We'd love to study them. Vexthul turned to his companions and spoke rapidly in their language. Dr. Kim caught a few words and started learning their speech patterns. In our experience, the commander said slowly, primitive species either attack us in desperation or immediately surrender when they see our power. You do neither. Well, attacking you seems pointless since we just met, Yoon said reasonably. And surrendering doesn't make sense when we don't know what we'd be surrendering to. Why don't you tell us about this galactic empire of yours? For the next hour, the aliens explained their vast empire. They ruled hundreds of species across thousands of worlds. Each species had their place in the hierarchy. Weaker species served stronger ones. The empire maintained order through fear and overwhelming force. Interesting system, Yoon said when they finished. But I don't think it would work for us. It works for everyone, Vexthul insisted. The strong rule. The weak serve. This is natural order. Maybe for some species, Park said. But humans tend to be a bit stubborn about things like that. You cannot resist the empire. We have power beyond your imagination. I'm sure you do, Dr. Kim said. But we're curious people. We like to understand things before we make big decisions. Could you give us a demonstration of these amazing weapons? The aliens exchanged glances. They had never encountered a species that responded to threats by asking for a demonstration. Very well, Vexthul said. We will show you our power. Perhaps, then you will understand. They returned to their ships. The alien vessel moved to a safe distance and targeted a large asteroid nearby. The asteroid was about the size of a mountain. Energy built up along the ship's main weapon, glowing brighter and brighter. The beam that fired was incredibly bright. It struck the asteroid and the entire rock simply vanished in a flash of light. Not even dust remained. Impressive, Park said, studying the energy readings on her instruments. Could we get a sample of the residual energy? Dr. Kim asked excitedly. This could revolutionize our understanding of physics. Commander Vexthul's voice came over the communications. Do you understand now? This is what happens to those who resist the Empire. We understand that you have very advanced technology, Yoon replied. But we still haven't heard a good reason why we should surrender our freedom. There was a long pause. Finally, Vexthul responded, Your freedom? Yes, the right to make our own choices, live our own lives, determine our own future. Surely your empire values freedom for its citizens? Another pause. Citizens serve the empire. The empire provides order and stability. That doesn't sound like freedom to us, Commander Lee said. That sounds like slavery with better marketing. You dare insult the empire? We're not insulting anyone, Yoon said calmly. We're just explaining why your offer isn't appealing to us. Perhaps we could discuss an alliance instead. We could work together as equals. Equals. The alien's voice was filled with disbelief. You are a primitive species that has barely left your own solar system. True, Park admitted. But we're fast learners, and we might have some ideas that could help your empire too. Help us? With what? Dr. Kim looked up from his continuing analysis. Well, for starters, you could improve your ship design by about 30%, just by removing those decorative spikes and optimizing your power systems. The communication channel went quiet for several minutes. When Vexthul spoke again, his voice was different, less threatening, more confused. We need to report this to our superiors. Your species is unusual. Take your time, Yoon said. We'll be here, and the coffee offer still stands if you want to come back and talk more. As the alien ship departed, the human crew watched it go. Think they'll be back? Lee asked. Oh, definitely, Dr. Kim said with a smile. We've given them the one thing their empire has never encountered before. What's that? A puzzle they can't solve with threats or weapons. Yoon nodded, looking out at the stars. Humanity was about to enter a much larger universe. He had a feeling it was going to be an interesting journey. Director Shin A-young looked at the massive pile of documents on her desk and sighed. She had been assigned to work in the Empire's Supply Distribution Center, a job that was supposed to keep humans busy with meaningless paperwork. Instead, she found herself staring at the most inefficient system she had ever encountered. "This can't be right," she muttered, checking the numbers again. According to the records, it took an average of 8 months to deliver basic supplies from central warehouses to outer colonies. Some shipments took over a year. Analyst Nam Junwoo looked up from his workstation nearby. "What's wrong? These supply chains make no sense. Look at this." Shin showed him a shipping manifest. "They're sending medical supplies from Sector 7 to Sector 12, then back to Sector 9, which is right next to Sector 7. Nam studied the document. That's a 40,000 light-year detour for no apparent reason. And it's not just one shipment. The entire system works like this. Engineer Go Yoon-ji joined their conversation. She had been assigned to infrastructure maintenance, another job designed to keep humans occupied with routine tasks. "You think that's bad? I'm looking at power distribution systems that haven't been updated in 300 years. They're losing 60% efficiency because nobody wants to change the original design." "Why not?" Shin asked. "Because it was designed by the Empire's founders. Changing it would be disrespectful to tradition." Mediator Seo Dong-hyuk walked over from his desk. His job involved handling complaints from various species, most of which were supposed to be ignored or dismissed with standard responses. "I'm seeing a pattern in my case files. Most of the problems people complain about have simple solutions, but nobody is allowed to implement them." "Allowed by whom?" Nam asked. "The bureaucracy. Every change has to go through 17 different approval levels, each taking months to process. By the time any decision is made, the original problem has usually gotten worse." Shin leaned back in her chair, thinking. "So we have a supply system that wastes time and resources, infrastructure that runs at 40% efficiency, and a complaint process that prevents any improvements. How does this empire function at all?" "Fear," said Go. "Everyone is so afraid of making mistakes that they'd rather do things wrong than risk changing anything. That's no way to run a civilization," Nam observed. "Unless the goal isn't efficiency," Seo said thoughtfully. "Maybe the inefficiency is deliberate. Keep everyone struggling with basic problems so they don't have time to think about bigger issues." The humans continued their assigned work, but they couldn't help approaching it the way they approached everything, by trying to understand it and make it better. Shin started by creating a simple map of supply routes. She used her computer to trace the actual paths shipments took versus the most direct routes. The results were shocking. The Empire was wasting enough resources to supply entire sectors just on unnecessary transportation. "I could fix this," she told her alien supervisor, Coordinator Vexhan. "Fix what?" "The supply distribution system. Look." She showed him her analysis. "If we reorganize the shipping routes and update the warehouse assignments, we could cut delivery times by 70% and reduce costs by half." Vexhan's multiple eyes widened. "You want to change the sacred distribution protocol?" "Sacred? It has been used for over 1,000 years. It was established by the first emperor himself. The first emperor probably didn't have access to modern transportation and communication technology. I'm sure he would have updated the system if he could see what we can do now." The coordinator looked nervous. "Making changes to imperial systems requires approval from the High Council. The process takes years. What if I could show them that it works? Just a small test?" "Impossible. The protocols are absolute." Shin nodded, politely, but she didn't stop working on her solution. She ran simulations, checked historical data, and built a comprehensive plan for improving the entire supply network. Meanwhile, Nam was discovering something else interesting in his data analysis work. The Empire collected enormous amounts of information about every transaction, shipment, and communication across thousands of worlds. But nobody seemed to actually analyze the data. "Look at this," he told the others during their lunch break. I found evidence of massive corruption in the Alterian sector. Someone has been skimming 30% of all medical supplies for the past 50 years. Did you report it? SEO asked. I tried. My supervisor said it wasn't my job to look for corruption, just to file the data properly. 30% of medical supplies, people must be dying because of this. Probably. But nobody in charge wants to know about it. Go had made similar discoveries in her infrastructure work. I found the blueprints for a power grid that could increase energy output by 300% using existing technology. When I showed my supervisor, he told me to put it back in the archives and forget about it. Why? Because implementing it would require admitting that the current system is flawed, and nobody wants to suggest that the Empire makes mistakes. SEO was seeing the human side of this institutional paralysis in his complaint files. I have thousands of requests for simple improvements: better lighting in work areas, updated safety equipment, more efficient food distribution, all denied because the current system is adequate. Adequate for what? Shin asked. Keeping people miserable? Over the following weeks, the humans continued their official assignments while quietly developing solutions to the problems they encountered. They couldn't get approval to implement changes, but they could prepare for the opportunity. Shin created detailed plans for reorganizing supply chains across 12 sectors. Nam documented corruption and inefficiency in hundreds of systems. Go designed infrastructure improvements that could benefit billions of people. SEO compiled a comprehensive list of citizen concerns and practical solutions. The opportunity came sooner than expected. A crisis erupted in the Kepler trade route, one of the Empire's most important commercial pathways. A solar storm had damaged several relay stations, disrupting communications and transportation across 40 systems. Normally, this kind of problem would take months to resolve through official channels. Billions of people faced shortages of food, medicine, and basic supplies while bureaucrats debated proper procedures. Coordinator Vexhan called an emergency meeting of his staff. The High Council is demanding immediate solutions. We need to restore the trade route within 2 weeks or face severe penalties. 2 weeks? Another coordinator said. It takes 2 weeks just to get approval for emergency supply requisitions. I have a solution, Shin said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. You have a solution for the Kepler route crisis? Vexhan asked. I've been studying the supply distribution system. I know exactly where we can find emergency supplies and how to get them to the affected areas quickly. How quickly? 3 days for the most critical supplies. Full restoration within a week. The room fell silent. This was impossible according to everything they knew about Imperial logistics. What would you need? Vexhan asked carefully. Permission to implement temporary supply route modifications and access to the central distribution database. The modifications you wanted to make to the sacred protocol? Temporary emergency modifications, Shin corrected, to save lives. Vexhan looked around at his staff. Nobody else had any solutions. The alternative was facing the High Council's punishment for failure. Do it, he said finally. Shin immediately began implementing her plan. She redirected shipments from overstocked warehouses to the crisis areas. She reorganized transport routes to bypass damaged stations. She coordinated with Nam to identify which supplies were most urgently needed, and with Go to prioritize infrastructure repairs. CO handled communications with local governments, listening to their specific needs and adjusting the response accordingly. Within hours, supply ships were moving toward the affected systems using routes that nobody had tried before. The new paths were shorter, faster, and avoided the damaged areas entirely. This is remarkable, Vexhan said, watching the progress reports. How did you know these alternate routes existed? I mapped the entire sector, Shin replied. There are dozens of more efficient paths that the standard protocol ignores. Why does the protocol ignore them? Because they weren't part of the original system design. Nobody ever updated it. As promised, critical supplies reached the most desperate areas within 3 days. Medical supplies arrived just in time to prevent a health crisis on 6 colonies. Food shipments ended starvation conditions on 12 worlds. Emergency equipment restored communications to isolated systems. The full crisis was resolved in 6 days instead of the usual months. News of the success spread quickly through the Imperial bureaucracy. Other coordinators began asking Shin for advice. Nam's corruption analysis led to the recovery of stolen resources worth trillions of credits. Go's infrastructure improvements were suddenly in high demand. SEO's citizen feedback systems became the model for other sectors. But the most significant change was in attitude. For the first time in centuries, Imperial administrators began to believe that problems could actually be solved instead of just managed. The humans are causing disruptions throughout the bureaucratic system, reported Senior Administrator Kothval to the High Council. What kind of disruptions? General Beck Insu studied the tactical display showing the approaching Void collective fleet and tried not to show his concern. The enemy force was massive, larger than anything the Empire had faced in 3 centuries. According to Imperial intelligence, the Void collective had been building their strength in dark space, preparing for this invasion. How many ships? Asked Captain Oh Hee-jin, commander of the newly formed human fighter squadron. Over 10,000 vessels, replied Imperial Admiral Korathval, his voice heavy with defeat. Our scouts report that they have new weapons, new tactics. The outer colonies are already falling. Commander Lim Jae-sung looked up from his analysis of enemy movements. What's the Empire's standard response to invasions of this scale? We consolidate forces around core worlds and prepare for siege warfare, the Imperial Admiral answered. We sacrifice the outer territories to buy time. You're going to abandon those colonies? Tactician Yu Soo-jin asked. How many people live in the outer territories? Approximately 40 billion beings across 300 worlds. And you're just going to let them be conquered? Admiral Korathval's tentacles drooped. We lack the resources to defend everything. The Void Collective is too strong. We can only hope to protect the most important worlds. General Bayek stood up and walked to the tactical display. He studied the enemy formations, the defensive positions, the Imperial fleet deployments. After several minutes of silence, he turned back to the group. This plan won't work, he said simply. Excuse me? Korathval's voice carried surprise and offense. Your defensive strategy is based on the assumption that the Void Collective will behave like the Empire. But they're not the Empire. They're nomads, raiders. They don't want to occupy your core worlds. They want to strip them of resources and move on. How do you know this? Beck pointed to the tactical display. Look at their attack pattern. They're not establishing supply lines or building permanent bases. They hit a world, take everything valuable, and move to the next target. If you pull back to defend the core worlds, you're giving them exactly what they want. Free access to hundreds of resource-rich colonies. Captain O studied the display with fresh eyes. He's right. This isn't an invasion. It's a harvesting operation. Then, what do you suggest? Korathval asked. We don't defend territory, Beck said. We defend people, and we do it by making the Void Collective's strategy impossible to execute. How? By turning every system they enter into a battlefield. Beck began outlining his plan. Instead of concentrating forces around a few heavily defended worlds, they would spread smaller, more mobile fleets throughout the threatened regions. Each fleet would include ships from multiple species, combining their different strengths and technologies. The Thoraxians have the fastest ships in the Empire, Beck explained. The Crystalline Union has the most powerful shields. The Zephyr clans have the best sensors. The Empire has been treating these as separate military forces, but they could be integrated into something much more effective. Integration of different species militaries has never been attempted, Korathval protested. The communication difficulties alone would be challenging, agreed Commander Lim. But not impossible. We've been working with mixed species teams in our other assignments. It can work if everyone focuses on the mission instead of the hierarchy. Tactician Yu pulled up fleet composition data. If we reorganize existing forces into integrated battle groups, we could field twice as many effective units. Instead of having 100 Imperial fleets fighting alone, we'd have 200 mixed fleets supporting each other. This is highly irregular, the Imperial Admiral said. So is losing 40 billion people because we're too proud to try something new, Captain O replied. The debate continued for hours. Traditional Imperial commanders argued for proven defensive strategies. Human officers proposed new approaches based on cooperation and mobility. Other species representatives listened to both sides with growing interest. Finally, Supreme Commander Velthar made the decision. We will attempt the human strategy in Sector 15. If it succeeds, we will expand it to other regions. If it fails, we return to conventional defense. Sector 15 contained 12 star systems with a total population of 3 billion. The Void Collective was expected to reach it within 2 weeks. Beck immediately began forming integrated battle groups. Each group contained ships from 4 or 5 different species, with humans serving as coordinators and tactical advisors. The first challenge was communication. Each species had different command structures, different protocols, different ways of thinking about warfare. The Thoraxians make decisions through group consensus, Lim explained during a planning session. You can't just give them orders. You have to explain the reasoning and let them discuss it. The crystalline beings communicate through harmonic frequencies, added Yu. Their tactical discussions sound like music to us. And the Zephyr clans have a honor-based hierarchy, O noted. They need to know that their contribution is valued and respected. Instead of trying to force everyone into Imperial command structures, the humans adapted to each species' needs. They spent time learning how different cultures approached military cooperation. They found ways to translate not just languages, but concepts and values. Captain O worked with a mixed squadron of fighters from 6 different species. Each species had developed their combat tactics in isolation, optimized for fighting alone. Your ships are fast, she told the Thoraxian pilots, but you break formation too easily when things get chaotic. The crystalline fighters have perfect formation discipline, but they're too predictable. What if we combined your speed with their coordination? The training exercises that followed were unlike anything the Empire had ever seen. Human pilots flew alongside insectoid Thoraxians, energy-based crystalline beings, and gaseous Zephyr pilots. Each species learned from the others, adapting their tactics to take advantage of their allies' strengths. Commander Lim focused on ground operations, preparing for the possibility that some worlds would be invaded. He discovered that each species had unique advantages in different types of terrain and combat situations. The Vorth are natural tunnel fighters, he reported. The Skyborn excel at aerial reconnaissance. The Stone People are perfect for defensive positions. Instead of using them as separate units, we can create combined arms teams that are effective in any environment. General Bayek coordinated the overall strategy, making sure all the pieces work together. He spent most of his time listening to the different species' military leaders, learning their perspectives on warfare and leadership. In the Empire's traditional military, he observed, everyone fights the same way because they're afraid to be different. But difference is strength if you know how to use it. When the Void Collective arrived in Sector 15, they found something they had never encountered before, a coordinated defense by multiple species working together as equals. The first battle took place around the agricultural world of Haven's Rest. The Void Collective sent a typical raiding force, expecting to overwhelm the defenders with superior numbers and firepower. Instead, they met a defense that adapted to their tactics in real time. Fast Thoraxian scouts identified enemy formations and transmitted the information to crystalline command ships with perfect communication arrays. Zephyr stealth vessels struck at weak points while Imperial heavy cruisers provided covering fire. Human coordinators helped all the pieces work together smoothly. Their tactical flexibility is unprecedented, reported the Void Collective commander, after the battle. When we adapted to counter one strategy, they immediately shifted to another. The battle was a tactical victory for the defenders, but more importantly, it proved that the integrated approach could work. Word of the success spread quickly through both militaries. Species that had never fought alongside each other began requesting joint training exercises. Pilots who had been taught to distrust other species' methods found themselves learning new techniques. The psychological impact was as significant as the tactical one. For the first time in Imperial history, different species were working together as true partners, rather than as dominant and subordinate forces. This changes everything, Admiral Karethval admitted to General Bayek after reviewing battle reports. Our military doctrine has been based on fear and hierarchy for so long that we forgot cooperation could be more effective. It's not just more effective, Beck replied. It's more inspiring. Look at your people. They're excited about fighting alongside their allies instead of just taking orders from superiors. The integrated approach spread to other sectors as the Void Collective invasion continued. Each success built momentum for further cooperation. Each mixed unit that performed well became a model for others. But the real test came when the Void Collective launched a massive assault on the fortress world of Titan's Gate, a critical defensive position protecting 3 major core systems. The battle would involve over 1 million ships from both sides. It would be the largest space engagement in galactic history, and for the first time ever, it would be fought by an Imperial force where humans and aliens served together as equals. Commander O looked out at her mixed squadron as they prepared for launch. Thoraxian fighters flew alongside crystalline interceptors and Zephyr stealth ships. Ambassador Ryu Taimin walked into the Imperial High Council chamber and felt the weight of history. The massive hall had witnessed thousands of years of imperial decrees, conquests, and subjugations. Today, it would witness something entirely different. The chamber was fuller than it had ever been. For the first time in imperial history, representatives from all 847 member species were present, not just the ruling classes, but elected delegates from every world, every culture, every people who had lived under imperial rule. "This is unprecedented," whispered Councillor Moon Ji-hai, taking her seat among the human delegation. "They're actually giving everyone a voice." "About time," replied Admiral Park Chan-woo, now commander of the newly integrated Galactic Defense Fleet. "You can't run a civilization this big by only listening to a few dozen voices." Philosopher Kwan Mi-kyung opened her notes preparing for what would be the most important diplomatic discussion in galactic history. The question isn't whether change will happen. The question is whether it happens peacefully. The transformation had begun months earlier, following the successful defense against the Void Collective. The integrated military forces that had saved countless worlds remained integrated after the war ended. Species that had fought together as equals found it difficult to return to the old hierarchies of dominance and submission. Requests for continued cooperation had flooded the Imperial administration. The Thoraxians wanted to maintain their partnerships with crystalline navigators. The Zephyr clans requested permanent joint training programs with human tactical advisors. The Stone people asked for integrated engineering teams to work on infrastructure projects, but the most significant change was in attitude. Species that had accepted their inferior status for centuries began asking uncomfortable questions. "Why do we need permission from the capital to make decisions about our own worlds?" asked the delegate from the Vorth Confederacy. "Why are our resources shipped to core worlds when our own colonies lack basic necessities?" demanded the representative from the Outer Rim Alliance. "Why do we pay taxes to support an empire that treats us as servants instead of citizens?" questioned the Aquatic League spokesperson. Ambassador Ryu had spent weeks meeting with delegations from different species, listening to their concerns and helping them articulate their hopes for the future. "What do you want?" he had asked each group. The answers were remarkably similar across all species and cultures: representation, respect, and the right to determine their own futures. "We don't want to destroy the empire," explained the feathered clan's representative. "We want to improve it. We want it to serve all of us, not just the ruling class." "We've seen what cooperation can accomplish," added the Silicon Collective delegate. "In the war, we worked together as equals and achieved amazing things. Why can't we govern ourselves the same way?" Councillor Moon had been working with legal scholars from dozens of species to draft a new governmental framework. The project required understanding hundreds of different legal traditions, cultural values, and social structures. "The challenge isn't creating a system that works for humans," she explained to her team. "It's creating a system that works for everyone." The framework they developed was based on principles of voluntary association, mutual benefit, and shared Decision-making. Instead of the Empire's top-down hierarchy, they proposed a federation where each member world retained autonomy over local affairs while participating in collective decisions about galaxy-wide issues. Think of it like a family, Moon told the other delegates. Each person has their own life and makes their own choices, but everyone contributes to decisions that affect the whole family. Admiral Park had been restructuring the military along similar lines. The success of integrated forces during the war had proven that cooperation was more effective than domination. We're not just changing who gives orders, he explained to his staff. We're changing how we think about military service entirely. The new Galactic Defense Fleet was organized around the principle that every species contributed equally to the common defense. Command positions rotated among different cultures. Mixed crews were standard on all ships. Training programs emphasized mutual respect and understanding. This is more than military reform, observed Captain Yeltar, a former Imperial officer, who had become one of Park's most trusted advisors. We're creating a new model of leadership based on competence and cooperation instead of fear and tradition. Philosopher Kwan had been studying the broader implications of these changes. Her research showed that the transformation went far beyond government and military structures. We're witnessing the birth of a genuinely multicultural civilization, she wrote in her reports. For the first time in galactic history, different species are learning from each other as equals instead of one culture dominating all others. Art, music, literature, and science were flourishing as different species shared their unique perspectives and knowledge. Technologies that had been restricted to specific worlds were now being shared and improved through collaboration. The economic changes were equally dramatic. Instead of resources flowing only toward core worlds, trade networks were developing, organically based on mutual benefit. Colonies that had been impoverished under imperial rule were becoming prosperous as they gained control over their own resources. But the most significant change was psychological. Species that had lived in fear for generations were rediscovering their confidence and creativity. The humans didn't conquer us, observed the delegate from the ancient archives. They reminded us that we didn't need to be conquered. As the Great Assembly began, Emperor Vexistorian Void III took his traditional place on the throne that had dominated the chamber for millennia. But today he wasn't speaking to subjects, he was addressing equals. Representatives of the galactic community, he began, his voice carrying across the vast hall. We gather today to discuss the future of our civilization. Ambassador Ryu stood to address the assembly. Your Imperial Majesty, honored delegates, we come here not to destroy what has been built over centuries, but to improve it. The Empire has brought peace and stability to 1,000 worlds. Now we have the opportunity to bring something more, freedom and prosperity for all. The debate that followed lasted for days. Every species had the opportunity to voice their concerns, propose solutions, and participate in shaping the new framework. Some voices called for gradual reform. Others demanded immediate change. A few insisted that the old system should be preserved. But the overwhelming majority supported the transformation to a truly representative government. The Thoraxians spoke of their desire for harmony between different songs. The Crystalline Union described their vision of perfect resonance among diverse frequencies. The Stone People called for strong foundations that support all who dwell upon them. When disagreements arose, the humans didn't impose solutions. Instead, they facilitated discussions, helped different groups understand each other's perspectives, and guided the assembly toward consensus. This is how humans approach every problem, observed the delegate from the Deep Thinkers. They don't force their will on others. They help everyone find solutions together. After 6 days of debate, the assembly reached a historic decision. The Galactic Empire would be dissolved and replaced by the Galactic Federation, a voluntary association of equal member worlds. Each world would retain sovereignty over its internal affairs while participating in collective decisions about trade, defense, scientific research, and other matters of common interest. The new government would be led by a council of representatives elected by their home populations, with a rotating presidency shared among different species. Emperor Vextorian Void III stood before the assembly one final time. no longer as an absolute ruler but as a representative of his own people. "I hereby dissolve the Galactic Empire," he declared, "and pledge my support to the new Federation. May it serve all our peoples better than the Empire ever could." The transformation wasn't immediate or easy. Centuries of habit and tradition don't change overnight. But the foundation had been laid for something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly cooperative civilization. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Federation flagship, looking out at the fleet that would defend the new government. Ships from hundreds of worlds flew in formation, their crews working together as partners rather than as rulers and subjects. "Think it will work?" asked his second-in-command, a Zephyr captain named Windsong. "It's working already," Park replied. "Look around. A year ago, none of this would have been possible." Ambassador Ryu was establishing the new diplomatic protocols that would govern relationships between the Federation and other galactic powers. Even the Void Collective had requested negotiations, intrigued by reports of the Empire's transformation. "They want to know how we convinced so many different species to work together voluntarily," Ryu told his staff. "Apparently, their own civilization is held together by force and they're having problems with rebellion." "What will you tell them?" asked his aide. "The truth. That cooperation works better than coercion, but only if everyone genuinely benefits from it." Counselor Moon was helping establish legal frameworks for the new Federation